Welcome to the homeless forum that we have been advertising for a couple of weeks now. We'd like appreciate everyone present physically as well as whoever might be watching online. At this moment, I would like to turn over to Supervisor Joan Hartman for a few words of introduction.
Well, thank you, City of Solvang, for hosting us. This is really a valley-wide discussion. And from the county's perspective, we have been, ever since COVID and the ARPA money, the home key, room key programs, we have invested tens of millions of dollars in addressing the homeless problem. It used to be something that was taken care of by nonprofit organizations and charitable organizations, and the county had a role, but it never really took ownership of this problem. And I think we've moved so that we're really working with the broader community. I chair something called the Elected Leaders Forum on Homelessness, and that includes all the cities as well as the county. And we are committed to working regionally on the problem of homelessness. You can't just move people from one jurisdiction to another. That's just musical chairs. And we agree that doesn't work, and we all have to step up and do our part. And we certainly can't do it without the nonprofit organizations that help. And I think you'll hear more about this, but it's really these organizations contribute to the homeless management information system so that we all share a database, and this has gone a long way so that it's hard to track and know what services people are getting without having this integrated database. So the nonprofits are part of that. We now really need to work too just with the community members and what are our core assumptions and values about homelessness. And I think we're all governed by the idea that human dignity requires a roof over your head. And we don't want people living rough under freeways and in riverbeds and on the streets. So we're committed to trying to bring them into shelters, into supportive housing, into the Dignity Moves tiny home villages that we've developed. And safe parking, maybe safe sleeping. We've got to get people out from living rough, because once you do that, your life disintegrates. And then we've got to invest a lot more to try to get people built up again. We're now focusing increasingly on how we keep people in housing in the first place. But this is, a full court press, and it takes everybody coming with some of the shared assumptions that we're working regionally, that people really need to be under a roof. So I'm so grateful that you're here, that you care about this issue, and we're really going to work together to leverage our efforts as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hartman. Landon, you have a few things you want to say?
Yeah, so I just want to welcome everyone. If you want to go, I think it's the fourth slide has my name, but I'm Landon Rank. I'm the Associate Director for an organization called SB ACT, and we're a countywide nonprofit that kind of serves as a hub organization, just trying to align all of our strategies, especially around homelessness issues in different parts of the county. So we work closely with a lot of these partners that you'll see on stage. So really tonight we have a couple of things we want to talk about with you all, and we really do want to be able to hear from everyone. A couple of things that we're going to be addressing are really what is being done about homelessness, because there is quite a bit being done. We also often like to say there's also not enough being done, and we all acknowledge that. So we really want to be able to talk to the community and learn from you as well. The second thing we want to talk about is how community members can really help with solutions. Because we know that we might have our own assumptions about what is a good way to actually help someone who's experiencing homelessness, or maybe if it's creating a nuisance in the neighborhood, what is the best way to respond to that? So we really want to talk through that and help everybody feel more and more equipped about how you can deal with these issues in the community. We do have over here resources. We'd love for you to come, if nothing else tonight, we would love for you to take one of these sheets that has all of the different homelessness resources, all of the phone numbers, all of the email addresses for different kinds of issues for Mid-County, just so you're aware of who to call in different kinds of situations. And then I also just want to acknowledge too, we put these little cards on seats. If you do have a burning question, we're going to get to questions at the end of the meeting. So write the questions down so that we can grab them from you, and then we'll take it to the panel afterwards. So yeah, I'm grateful to be here tonight, and we have a group of real experts on these issues that are going to be speaking with us. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to some of our county staff to share about what the county is doing to address homelessness. So we'll start with them.
Actually, I just wanted to, I didn't kind of tell the story of kind of why we're here.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Randy Murphy. I'm the Solvang City Manager. I've been here almost 2 years. I've become familiar with the homeless issues in our city, and I have some observations, and I wanted to share kind of how we got here and why we're here today. So last summer, I took a long road trip, and one of the places I visited was the city of Canton, Ohio, go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Yay, Niners. Anyhow, while I was there, I noticed some signage around the city at the intersections where you typically see panhandling happening, and there was a sign there that said, essentially, don't give money to the panhandlers. There's a better way, and there was a website to reference to donate your funds there so they could be put to better use. And it made me kind of think back here and what's going on. The handful of homeless folks that we have typically in Solvang are what they refer to as service resistant. And that means they don't want to go into a facility. And my thought was the main reason they're doing that or are not willing to go into a facility is because they have a support network. People at home, family, friends that love them and that are providing shelter and funds, and shelter in the terms of like a tent or whatever. And I thought, it would be good to get the word out about what is available, what services are available. I didn't think there was anything really being done to advocate that, so I started talking to some of the people on the dais up here and Supervisor Hartman, and that's kind of how this meeting came about. So that's kind of why we're here. I also wanted to share my story. So I'm, in the last 10 to 12 years, I myself experienced housing insecurity. I wasn't quite homeless, but I very easily could have been. And I kind of look like, okay, inwardly, and I say, if it can happen to me, at the time, a 50-something white male, privileged white male, if you will, college educated, and if it can happen to me, then it can happen to anyone. I mean, I had a good paying job, and then I didn't. I had a family, and then I didn't. And I had no income, and if it weren't for the largesse of some friends and some other family, I very easily could have been on the street. I never slept outdoors. I never slept in my car anywhere. I did what they refer to as couch surfing a little bit. And, I was a medical emergency or a car accident away from being on the street. So I can very easily put myself in the place of some of the folks that are out there. And I just want to share that story to kind of emphasize the fact that if it can happen to somebody like me, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah, thank you for that. That is, I think, a really important framing for today is that we're not only going to be talking about homelessness, but also the issue of housing insecurity, because we know that is, part of and very much connected to this continuum of people who are maybe vulnerable in this community. And so, actually, do you want to pull up the next slide with the agenda on it for me? Just so everybody knows. So we'll be hearing from a couple different groups today. We're going to start with some of the team from the County of Santa Barbara within the Housing and Community Development Division, who will be sharing about what's being done at the county-wide strategic level. And then we'll hear from the specific providers within Solvang and the San Ynez Valley. We have People Helping People and Good Samaritan both here tonight. And so we're going to hear from each of them about what they're doing to address homelessness and housing insecurity in the region. And then at the end, we'll have some time for just Q&R with all of our lovely panelists that we have. So you can ask questions related to anything at the city, county, or regional level. So write down your questions as we go. I can collect cards as we go. Feel free to grab another because it looks like we have plenty. And we'll turn it to the county staff.
All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Catherine Soto Vasquez. I'm the encampment response manager. Oh, yeah, this slide. I'll give it. Yeah, that one. Perfect. Encampment response manager with the Homelessness Services Program team. And I'm joined with a couple of my colleagues here, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
You're bringing that slide up for, right? Okay. Well, yeah, so I'm Joe Desvonik. I'm the Deputy Director for Housing and Community Development inside the Community Services Department for the county. And in HCD, as we call ourselves, Housing and Community Development, we really have two teams. One of them focuses on the creation of affordable housing across the county, even in the cities and with the cities and unincorporated area. And then the other half of our division is a team of folks who are focused on homelessness. And of course, they have a lot of things, in common. So we work together. And I just want to build off one of the things that Supervisor Hartman was talking about, which is, we look at that she said basically 10, 15 years ago, folks didn't, the homelessness, the level of homelessness today didn't really exist. And we're trying to figure out new ways to address it. And I mean, even county governments themselves really didn't even have a function to address it. So we created a homeless team inside, what we have at CSD. Other counties are creating homeless teams at different parts of the government as well to build a structure to address it. But it's there really is no clear answer to it. Some people say affordable housing is the obvious solution to homelessness, and that probably has some truth to it. But however, we have addiction issues out there. We have mental illness and other issues that all contribute to this. So there's a lot of ways we have to approach it, and that's what we're doing. That's what we hope to share here with you tonight. All the different ways that we might be able to help you as a community address homelessness and prevent it in the community here. And I will turn it over to Emily.
Hello, Emily Allen. I'm the Interim Homeless Assistance Program Manager for the County of Santa Barbara. And we address homelessness through housing people, certainly, and our different nonprofit providers have become really good at getting people housed. But we also know that we need to prevent people from becoming homeless to really see the numbers decrease. So that's been, a focus of ours recently. Homeless prevention can be about case management, helping people connect with those types of supportive services, utility assistance, rental assistance, and I know we have some of our nonprofits here today who will talk more about how they do that here locally. We also, though, end homelessness through helping people with housing. We have our coordinated entry system. That's how we assess people who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness to help better understand what type of housing intervention they might need, and then refer them to providers for housing and supportive services. We've also really focused a lot, as Supervisor Hartman said, on creating more interim or emergency shelter sites. These sites can really help people with case management to get ready for housing, to get the necessary documents they need, to connect to different types of supportive services. So that's been a focus. We know that we need to build more affordable housing, so we're working with affordable housing providers on home key projects to apply for state funding to build more affordable housing. And we know that we all need to work together as a community to use our plans that we have at addressing homelessness, and to use those plans, and elected leaders, our continuum of care, takes those plans. We're measuring our progress using our homeless management information system, our data system, to see how we're doing. So that's how we track our progress. And, we just want to have a conversation with everybody today to see, how as a community we can work together to address this issue. So thank you.
And I didn't do my spiel. I think, we've shared already kind of high level overview. And if there's really something that you take away tonight is understanding that our system of care is just that it's a system, it's a spectrum of different services, from prevention to shelter to that case management, then that housing component, and even following someone all the way through to that housing placement and making sure that they're retaining. So a lot of that work, it's not that one solution, it's all of these different components working together. And tonight we're really here to highlight the amazing work of our partners here in the community that do this work every single day, both as outreach providers and service providers that operate as an access point. So in reach, people have the resources and ability to come to us, as well as meeting them where they are, whether it's in the riverbed or unsheltered throughout the community.
So thank you to the Housing and Community Development team. I wanted to make a plug again. They really pulled this all together, but there is this really helpful guide of all the different resources that exist. And Catherine mentioned the spectrum of services. So it's everything from shelter to food to services for specific subpopulations, youth, veterans, whatever it may be. But the important thing is what Catherine's saying is all of these services can help them, the individuals, to get connected into our broader system and ultimately, hopefully, help them towards housing. So really encourage you to take one of these at the end of tonight. So with that, I want to turn to our two service provider panelists that we have. And maybe we can start with our partner from Good Samaritan to talk about what they're doing to address homelessness before we go to People Helping People to talk about kind of the whole spectrum of housing insecurity.
Good evening. I'm Kirsten Cahoon. I'm Director of Homeless Services for the Good Samaritan Shelter. I've been working with Good Sam in the homeless service sector for the last 14 years. Have definitely seen how it's changed and kind of morphed throughout the years. So just going to kind of start with an overall view of what Good Samaritan does, in case you're not familiar with Good Sam, and then dive into some of the other aspects that are more focused on the homeless individuals that are in Solvang and in the San Ynez Valley. So Good Sam is the largest homeless service provider in Santa Barbara County, and I think also San Luis Obispo County at this point. We have services there as well. We started about 40 years ago as just a rotating homeless shelter from church to church, very small. I think we had 12 beds when it started. And now we have locations throughout the county, nearly 250 employees. We have 50-some locations. Some of the different services that Good Sam provides is we provide homeless prevention, so something called diversion that I'll talk about a little bit more later. We provide permanent housing. We do have some of our own permanent housing developments that most of them are in partnership with the housing authorities in different regions. We have our own mental health department. We have substance use counselors and our own residential inpatient and outpatient drug and alcohol treatment centers, which are located both in Santa Maria and in Lompoc. We have outreach teams throughout the county that work right here in Solvang and the San Ynez Valley as well, which I'll share a little bit more about. We have veteran teams. So we have a SSVF program, which is the Supportive Services for Veteran Families program, which is a housing assistance program for veterans where we can actually help stabilize them and pay their rent for over 2 years now. So we have housed about 96 veterans over the last year, which is a really, really phenomenal number. Our county is very close to declaring that we've ended veteran homelessness, which is going to be an amazing accomplishment after all these years. But we have a lot of resources for veterans, and we also have a grant per diem program for our vets, which we have some houses in Santa Maria where we can house veterans from anywhere in the county. So it doesn't matter where they're at, we can bring them into one of our houses, which are beautiful homes in residential neighborhoods where our veterans can be there, stabilize, connect with different services, and are able to ultimately get housed. We have our shelters, which kind of Good Sam is kind of more known for the Good Sam shelters. We actually have 9 different shelters right now. Probably forgot one in there. But we have congregate and non-congregate shelter. Supervisor Hartman kind of mentioned the Dignity Move shelter, which is our newest model of non-congregate shelters. We have our first shelter that we opened was in Santa Maria. So we have our congregate emergency shelter, which means folks are in a big room with a bunch of bunk beds and kind of like the old school version of the shelters, which is still super effective and super needed. We have about 47 kiddos in that shelter right now. So still something that's very, very necessary to have, and the kind of shelter that really works with families. I always say it takes a village. They always say it takes a village to raise a child. And that's really what you see in these sorts of shelters, or moms that come in there, dads that come in there with kiddos that need help and support. And not only do they get that from the staff, but they also tend to get that from each other, which is a really beautiful thing to watch. And then we have our non-congregate shelter models, the Dignity Moves type models, which are tiny home cabins. We have one of them in Santa Maria, which has 94 different units, kind of over by the Betteravia Government Center. We have our first one is Dignity Moves downtown Santa Barbara, which is about a block off of State Street. We have La Posada now in Goleta, and which is a beautiful facility as well. That's a partnership with Behavioral Wellness. And then we have the Bridge House Shelter, which is, again, the congregate shelter in Lompoc, which also serves the San Ynez Valley as well, and folks from your community, and Rainbow Village, which were pallet shelters that originally started with a project in Isla Vista that were moved to the Bridge House Shelter. So we have our big congregate shelter at Bridge House, and I'll share some pictures in a little bit. And then we've got about 20 of these tiny homes on the campus at the Bridge House Shelter as well, that are actually really dedicated to one of our outreach teams that we'll discuss a little bit more about. So that's kind of what Good Sam encompasses across the county. We have teams on the streets every single day working with the unsheltered folks and trying to offer them services and get them into shelters. So I'll switch to the next slide. So we have 2 specific outreach teams, the SURF 2 outreach teams, and these are named after really their funding sources, so don't ask me what they stand for anymore because I don't remember. But the SURF 2 team is actually dedicated to the waterways countywide. So they are a multidisciplinary outreach team that has substance use treatment counselors, they have nurses, mental health practitioners with them, and our outreach team members. They are in all the riverbeds, all the creeks, anywhere where there's a waterway in the county, that's really the area that they're dedicated to. So they go out as a multidisciplinary team and work with folks on doing assessments, getting them attached to any services they possibly can, and being able to give them different referrals to different treatment and mental health. They can also do mental health assessments and sessions right there in the riverbeds where they're at, which is really incredible. The SURF team works here in the riverbeds and creeks here in Solvang and San Ynez, and they work really hard on establishing rapport with clients first. A lot of the folks that we see in the riverbeds are folks that have been there for a really long time and have maybe been, you'll hear the word service resistant, had a hard time wanting to take shelter and things like that. So this team really takes a lot of time and a lot of compassion to develop relationships with these folks, know them by name, and really after some time of building that kind of rapport, being able to offer them services like sheltering, or if sheltering is not something that works for them, they work with them on getting them straight into permanent housing from wherever they're at on the streets. The SURF team in Mid-County served 64 individuals through 2024, and they permanently house 67% of them, which is really phenomenal in Mid-County that they were able to do that. A lot of these folks have not wanted to talk to an outreach worker for a really long time, and the SURF team just really did a great job building that kind of rapport with them. They currently have 4 folks in the Rainbow Village at Bridge House that were from Solvang, that were super service resistant for a long time, that were in this area that they've worked with and got them in there. And they are both there are two couples, and they're both on track to be housed within the next month. They were able to actually get them their social security cards and work permit. So they've been able to gain employment, and just a really great success stories through the Surf 2 team. So the other team is our ARPA outreach team. So they are really focused on the city area. So they are on the streets in Solvang, Santa Ynez, Santa Maria, Santa Barbara, Lompoc, everywhere. They have two-person teams that are dedicated to all the regions to work with our unsheltered communities that are within this like city lying areas. So there's some pictures in there. I think some of that is the Santa Ynez riverbed from a recent outreach effort, and then our ARPA team is on there as well. But these teams are out there every single day. It doesn't matter what the weather is. They'll send me pictures knee-deep in mud in the riverbed, trudging through to make sure folks are okay during storms and things like that as well. So those are our street outreach teams. Go ahead. And this is our Bridge House shelter. So the Bridge House shelter is the shelter that is offered for folks in the Santa Ynez Valley and Solvang that are willing to accept shelter. They can come out to our Bridge House shelter. Here's some pictures of the campus. We have our main shelter, and then we have Rainbow Village that you'll see kind of on the corner, those colorfully painted, they're called little pallet shelters that the Surf 2 team is actually, those are funded for the Surf 2 team to place folks in. So a lot of the times our folks that are deep in the riverbeds or have been chronically homeless for a long time who haven't wanted to accept shelter before is because being in that congregate shelter with a lot of people is uncomfortable for them. It might be mental health issues, it might be PTSD. For a lot of our veterans, congregate sheltering is really hard. It's super triggering. So these non-congregate shelters are just something that they end up accepting a lot more than they would being offered a bunk in a congregate shelter. So Rainbow Village has really offered that to the Surf 2 team so that they've been able to offer that to the clients. So Bridge House Shelter kind of shows both the congregate and the non-congregate. At the Bridge House Shelter too, there's this incredible farm that we're so proud of, that there's I think one or two pictures of the farm on there. So we actually have a farm training program that we run out of the Bridge House now, which is really wonderful. The clients can work on the farm and learn a multitude of skills, and then be able to go out into farmers markets. We actually sell veggie boxes now to the community, and they're a part of making that. And all the produce is shipped to our Santa Maria shelter campus, where there's a culinary training program and a barista training program. So folks are now cooking with the produce that we're growing at the Bridge House farm, and this is all being done by our clients there, and then feeding all of our shelters. So all of our shelters are being fed from the culinary training program and the beautiful produce that we get from the farm. So just a really great way for our clients to make a difference, learn a skill, be able to develop a resume, and then we have some partnerships with different restaurants and different farming companies that help them get their foot in the door for employment, which has been really successful. So we're super proud of that. We call that part of Good Sam Food for Good. So if you're ever interested in a veggie box, you can subscribe on there. You can go to the next slide. So I wanted to talk a little bit as well about diversion. So this is a really important part of homeless services, like how when somebody shows up at the shelter or calls the shelter, or we find somebody that is homeless, that is about to become homeless, what can we do in that moment to prevent them from entering the homeless service system? It's a lot less expensive to pay somebody's rent for a couple of months that they're behind than it is for them to come into this homeless service system, where on average it takes about 6 months from somebody to go from homelessness to housing in our county, with our low vacancy rates, our high rents, and just our competition to try to get somebody. All of our clients that enter the shelters get a case manager immediately, and their focus from that day forward is to get to permanent housing. How can we get them as quickly as possible to permanent housing? And we have about 49 to 50% success rate in getting folks to permanent housing. Last year, Good Sam served 4,923 unduplicated clients throughout our county, which is a lot of folks that, and if you think of about 50% of that we were able to get housed, is pretty remarkable. So diversion, when they call the shelter and say, do you have a bed? You know, I'm about to become homeless. That's really kind of where diversion kicks in. And what can we do in that moment to prevent them from having to come and take a bed in one of our shelters? Sometimes that looks like family reunification, which is one of my favorite parts of homeless services. I always say, like, we talk so much about like permanent housing, getting your own apartment, getting your own house, but sometimes all it takes is to sit with them and make a phone call to their mom in Texas that they haven't talked to in a while because they burned some bridge because of their substance use or mental health issues. And let's talk about like where they're at now, and you know, are they able to go there and live with them and be given another chance, and you know, be given an opportunity somewhere else where they would not be homeless. So we're able to provide those bus tickets back, those airplane tickets to wherever they need to go, as long as we can establish that they will not be homeless there. Our goal is not to like move their homeless issue to another community, but if we can allow them and help them to make that connection again, it's a really important and successful part of homeless services. So that's the first thing we do. We try that with outreach. We try that with anybody that calls. Or do they need, you know, are they about to be evicted because they missed, you know, a couple months of rent? Well, let us get in there and pay that rent, get a plan with the landlord, get with them on making a budget, you know, helping them with some, you know, rent moving forward a little bit until they can get back on their feet. So diversion is really an important part of homeless services in a way that we can really prevent homelessness from continuing to climb in numbers and things like that if we can kind of fix it on the ground floor and figure out what's happening so that we can fix them, you know, falling into there. On here is the diversion hotline, which is a really great phone number. If you know anybody that is about to become homeless and they're like, next month I have my eviction notice. Next month I'm going to be homeless. Have them call the diversion hotline. Have them reach out for help before they are calling us for a bed in one of the shelters, because it really does make a difference. We also, I forgot to mention, we also have a safe house in Santa Maria. We have an adult safe house for human trafficking survivors from throughout the county. So if you ever come into contact with anybody that you think could be a survivor of human trafficking in your community, please reach out to the safe house. I do have some flyers there. I have my card there. And you can call any of the numbers and we can direct you over to the safe house. But we have 16 beds for women in Santa Maria in an undisclosed location with an amazing program manager that really works with these women to get them back on their feet and get them stabilized and get them the services that they need. So that's another, if you ever think that somebody might be in that situation, please reach out and let us come out and chat with them and make sure that they get the help they need. So that's Good Sam. Open to any questions. We've been working in your community for a long time, trying to do what we can for homelessness, and are always open to suggestions and ideas and how we can do things better. So thank you.
Thank you. And then let's go to Ms. Erica Flores with San Ynez Valley People Helping People.
Good evening, and thank you so much for everybody up here on the panel, not only for the work and leadership that we do. There are a tremendous amount of county resources and dedication and commitment and compassion. And as I look in the audience, I also see so many neighbors and partners and colleagues right here in the San Ynez Valley. And it takes both, and it takes all of us. And so I hope tonight that some of my remarks can raise our collective awareness and a reminder of what San Ynez Valley People Helping People has done for over 30 years and is doing today, how that has shifted like it has for so many of us since and through the pandemic and after. And also for us to consider, what do we do in our community? What each of us, because we each have a role in that. So San Ynez Valley People Helping People started in 1992. Local community members saw a need and responded. And at that time, it was about food and food insecurity. And a lot of the same folks harvesting or serving our food hungry. And so neighbors came together and started meeting that need. Food remains to be in many ways, our front door of the service that we provide. There's some type of food distribution 7 days a week from our outdoor food pantry, our emergency services pantry, fresh rescue from local grocery stores, especially Albertsons, Tuesdays and Friday mornings from our headquarters in Solvang, and large food distributions at the Creekside Apartments in Los Alamos and at the Mission San Ynez in Solvang, both of those 2 times a month, including USDA. So food remains to be a big part of what we do. When I started at People Helping People, it was in December 2020, and I thought the pandemic was pretty much over. And at that time, everybody had a role, and I was working at the front desk, and we all had to do a part. And at the time when they would come in and somebody needed some food, I would go to our emergency food pantry, pack a bag, and go. And there was not too far into 2021 that I had more people coming in, living in their cars, living outside, and where the history of our organization had really been feeding people that had homes and kitchens, and that began to shift, that all of a sudden was like, oh, we need can openers. Now, it's important to know that we are talking about not just what is the picture of what does the county look like, but what does San Ynez Valley look like? And that began to shift. The other food led to a series of more programs. So I want to be clear about what San Ynez Valley People Helping People's space is really in prevention, not only in housing, but also we are partners with the county behavioral wellness. So our prevention and mental health is in prevention and early intervention, school-based counseling. We have school-based counseling currently at San Ynez Elementary and San Ynez High School. Those are currently where we're providing our services. We also, through behavioral wellness, we are doing substance use prevention work for youth. We have a network of family resource centers throughout the San Ynez Valley, in addition to our headquarters. So our headquarters in downtown Solvang and at our neighborhood schools and high school. And we also have the thrift store in Bealton, where we have vouchers for clients and low-cost goods for the community as well. And that also helps underwrite our services. In the space of homelessness prevention, that's really where what we do and we do well. The San Ynez Valley does not have a shelter. It does not have safe parking. It does not have safe sleeping. We do not have a public transportation system that's going to get you to many of the county agencies, social services, or nonprofits, or shelters, or domestic violence solutions, right? So People Helping People, if you take away anything, I want to say, we are an access point. That's an official name for the county, but we're a connection point. So you have this handout, or just even listening to the incredible resources of Good Samaritan. Are you going to remember everything when you walk out the door? Probably not. And every time you hear the presentation, I hope you learn something more. But we are the connection point, or the access point for so much of the wealth of services and resources that are available. A guiding principle that we all know, I am as stubborn as it comes. I can be told that there's a lot of good out there for me, and there's a lot of opportunity out there for me. It has to be my choice. And the guiding of our work at People Helping People and providing wraparound integrated case management services starts with somebody has to want and decide and gets to choose at every step of the way. And it is our hope, and we know so many of the names and faces and people, or maybe even those that are experiencing homelessness right here in our community were in our classes growing up or on the on the teams we coached. They're not a stranger in this small of a community. They are neighbors, they're friends, they're family, they're people that we know. And it's our hope that People Helping People, as it has been for 30 years, is that when someone is ready, we're here. When somebody needs it, we're here. When someone doesn't know where to point or connect somebody, that they know to call People Helping People, and we can be that front door, that entryway, that bridge, that warm place to go and navigate a really complex system. We've been here, and we're here to stay. We are that resource. We do provide prevention work. We are People Helping People, and know that much of our prevention work is done with individual donor dollars from this community. And finally, remember that we are that connection point to the resources, and it starts with somebody's choice.
So thank you both so much. If you want to pull up that slide, actually, Olivia. So we're going to just go to a time of questions. I'm going to start with just a few general questions we'll ask to Erica and Kirsten, and then we'll open it up for questions from the community. So keep writing them down. You can pass them in as we start this next part. But Erica and Kirsten, I wanted you both just to name, if you could, what do you see as some of the main barriers that prevent people from either getting into housing or from being able to stay housed?
Sure. So I think some of the main barriers is obviously we have a huge opioid epidemic in our county, in our community, in our state, in the United States, and that is really people's addictions is a really huge barrier to get folks into housing. It's hard to get somebody document ready or get them into shelter, or if we're not able to connect with them every week or whenever we try to reach out to them, because they're still really deep in their addictions. With that really goes hand in hand with mental health crisis. A lot of folks' addictions are because they're self-medicating mental health issues. Most people don't want to be addicted to fentanyl or heroin or anything else, but if it helps quiet the voices in their heads a little bit, because it takes 6 months to get a doctor's appointment, to get on some medications, or to remember when your follow-up appointments are because you're living on the street, sometimes turning to substances is kind of their only crutch that they have. So those are some of the biggest barriers to getting folks into housing. Obviously, in a community with less than a 1.5% vacancy rate, super competitive market for housing, and landlords that are really getting some top dollar for rental units right now are huge barriers when it comes to kind of the housing side of things, and things that we're up against all the time. If a landlord has a choice between, a working professional, or even if we're willing to pay their rent for 6 months and can, assure them that we will, be there to be checking on them in housing and all of those things. If they have a choice between that or somebody that, is sheltered or unsheltered, unfortunately, we don't always win out on that one. So I think that those are some of the main barriers to getting folks housed.
I want to answer, and again, thinking about the San Ynez Valley and recognizing that we have a lot of folks that are housing insecure, that there's multiple families in a home, that they're converted garages, unsafe conditions. Our team was out doing outreach, and we're invited in to a family of 5, and in a small 10 by 10 unit, lift up the rug and there's exposed pipe. Okay, so speaking to that, I want to talk about what opportunities to those barriers look like that we haven't had in really recent time, but we could. You heard earlier affordable housing being a part of the solution, and especially here in the San Ynez Valley. If you don't know, Polo Village is a 49 unit housing complex in Buellton across from the Marriott. Hoping to be unlocking doors in about a month. And that is low income housing. Because of partnerships, because of collaborations, because of relationships, people helping people, being able to be the local community-based organization here, working hand in hand, side by side with the Santa Barbara Housing Authority and United Way and local donors, we have been able to do really a concierge outreach process to take somebody to know about the opportunity, get somebody on the wait list, a wait list that preference in part is the time. If the wait list opened at 8 a.m. and you hit apply at 8 a.m., you're at the front of the line. Our neighbors wouldn't have known that without that concierge level of awareness. Providing and being a part of gathering the paperwork and getting them in. So from January, in a matter of a few weeks, our small and mighty team was able to help 43 Santa Ynez Valley residents to get on to that wait list. I don't know how big the wait list is, but I do know that one of our clients said that they were number 824. Okay, so 49 unit complex, Polo Village in Buellton. Our team was able to help 43 local San Ynez Valley residents. We know one of our clients was number 824 on that wait list. 21 of those households were invited to actually apply and are in the application process. If you have, I think that there's more paperwork in getting one of these units than buying a home. Fair? Yeah. And do you have that paperwork? And how the time from when you're invited to apply to hit submit, we're talking 10 days. So if you don't have a social security card, that's one of the documents you're needed. You need identification for a child. Do you have that? Are you going to get it in the time that window closes? No. So our case management team have dedicated that concierge service, and we're waiting and cheering and hoping that we'll be able to have local residents into that housing complex. The other, just to give you a picture of what those 43 households, okay, of those 43, only 2 are either not a local working family or a local low-income senior on a fixed income. Right? So whatever your picture might be, these are contributing, working, local families. So the opportunity is when you can advocate, support local and affordable housing, when you can advocate, support local community business or nonprofits that have relationships with local residents, we can be a part of our own answer in our own community.
Thank you. And then just one other question from me, and then I'll keep collecting question cards. But what are some common misconceptions that you hear about homelessness or housing insecurity, and what is the reality, especially in this community?
Sure, I think some of the misconceptions are that people have an idea of what a homeless individual looks like in their head, and it's the person pushing a shopping cart down the freeway or down the road. And a lot of the times, it's working folks that are working and are doing everything they can to try to survive. But bottom line, in the economy that we're in, you could be working full-time, making minimum wage, and probably not be able to afford a place to live, unfortunately. We're also seeing a huge increase in the senior population. Social Security is not enough money to allow a senior to rent a place and still pay for things like food and medications. A lot of our seniors are making a choice between the roof over their head or whether or not they're going to be able to get their medication for the next month. So we're seeing them falling into homelessness and ending up in our shelters. I'm an 86-year-old in one of my shelters right now, and it's heartbreaking. So I think some of the misconceptions are that it's always somebody that's, struggling with substance use or struggling with mental health. That's the guy talking to himself or talking, in front of the grocery store or something like that. But, countywide, including the San Ynez Valley and Solvang, I think that, it's seniors, it's folks that are working, it's families, it could be anybody. Randy shared that earlier. One paycheck away, one car accident away, for our seniors, their spouse passing away and not having that dual income anymore, or not really ever being on your own, has brought folks into homelessness. So I think kind of the face of homelessness for me is always a misconception, and I need to remind people that it's not just what they see on TV, that it's a lot deeper than that. I've had teachers in my shelters. I've had real estate agents in my shelters. I've had, folks that have had really good jobs, nurses, medical assistants, you name it. But this is a really tough county and community to be able to live in and survive in. So homelessness looks very different, I think, because of that.
Oh, the misconceptions. That the San Ynez Valley could exist without all of our neighbors, including those that are experiencing housing insecurity. I think sometimes we might think that the face of homelessness is an other, that it isn't someone so close to us when in fact it is. That their homelessness or houseless insecurity is the invisible part of their story, but they're really visible in our lives around us and in our networks and in our communities. And I think that also the most challenging part that even our team faces is that I started with saying it's a choice to when you want to get help. That is true. I think that it also, we forget how complicated it is to receive, get, and sustain help when you're trying to help yourself. What do I mean? We had a local family at an elementary school working, 2 children in school, and we're trying to apply for CalWorks. CalWorks having to be renewed. The CalWorks office is in Lompoc. Closed there by 4:30. How do you stay employed? Where do you have your kids if they're not at the Boys and Girls Club? Valerie, there. And go renew those benefits and get to a hotel. And I don't have a car or a reliable one to go back and forth. We called the Santa Barbara County Office of Education, and they said, there's a liaison at the district. Ask the district. They're like, we got $20 gift cards. So it's trying to keep people in their community, kids in their schools, people in their jobs, and doing that here. It is complicated, and it's expensive, and it requires the type of, again, I'm going to use the term concierge, but the service that we're doing, picking somebody up, taking them to Lompoc, figuring out the childcare, and that's just for one day. then, of course, you multiply that for the types of more complex system-wide issues throughout the county that my colleagues here deal with day in and day out. But I just kind of want to give a glimpse of what does it look like right here in our neighborhood.
Thank you. I've gotten a few good questions already, so feel free to just wave them high if you want me to come grab it. We heard about waiting lists, and so one of the questions is around the housing vouchers, where you can actually get a subsidy to be able to move into an apartment of your own. And so the curiosity is, what is the wait list specifically for the Section 8 housing? This could be for anyone on our panel.
Tell me to. Well, when somebody applies, sometimes the housing authorities say that it could take 8 or 9 years. However, there are different preferences for people, and that's one reason it's so important to have an outreach worker or case manager assisting. So if somebody's a veteran, if they're disabled, if they're homeless, those are some of the factors we have on our coordinated entry system list. We do have a preference for housing people in their region. So when a development opens, we're looking at the people in that area. So, lists are dynamic. People don't usually stay fixed on a list, but it can be quite a time for somebody to receive that, even if they're eligible, even if they meet, the income requirements.
Another question about the LA fires and whether we've seen any impact related to either homelessness or housing in this community.
We started asking that question during this most recent point in time count. We've certainly been talking to the providers and seeing if they are seeing that. They're not yet seeing that among people experiencing homelessness, but it is something that we're specifically asking as people enter into our system. And we do ask people, where did you live before you became homeless? So that's something, whether it's during our point in time count or just on a daily basis as people are connecting with outreach workers or shelters, that's the type of information we're gathering.
We had a lot of people at our hotels for a while, and in real estate, people do tell me that they're getting more and more inquiries.
A related question with that would be how much of our population experiencing homelessness in this community is coming from this community, whether that's specifically the San Ynez Valley or countywide?
It's in the close to 80% of people who report having lived in Santa Barbara County before becoming homeless. So, we see that consistently in our county. It's something you do typically see in other places also. A lot of people do stay where they know where services are, they know where safe places are. So there are folks that do migrate, and we see that also, but a large percentage of people lived here, lost housing and are staying close to where they know where resources are.
Another question about prioritizing. So how do we prioritize certain vulnerable populations, whether it's children, veterans, individuals with disabilities, whether for homeless services or housing?
So I'll take some of these, I think, just because it's what we were really focused on. And some of that is, wait lists for housing. So some of that might be the county housing authority or a city housing authority. So they have their process for having a wait list. But a lot of resources now come through what's called our coordinated entry system. And so we're looking to prioritize people for permanent supportive housing. For that, we're looking at people who've been homeless longer, have disabling conditions, are really going to need supports, that affordable housing with supportive services to stay housed. But we're also assessing people to understand who could be served by what's called rapid rehousing. So that is help with a deposit, shorter term rental assistance, still providing case management to people, but who might need less financial assistance, less ongoing support. So our goal is to understand what resource can help somebody end their homelessness, retain their housing, and not return to housing.
And then the priorities are obviously set too by funding sources, right? So we know for veterans, as we're talking about the progress we made on veteran homelessness, it's because we have organizations like the VA that have put a lot of money because that's generally what it will take to affect change in that area. Recently, HUD has also, kind of launched what we call the YHDP, which are youth funds, funds for preventing and addressing homelessness and folks under the age of 18, essentially. And so that's when those big funding sources come out, and they're directed from state and federal authorities with a lot of direction. It helps us prioritize that locally, and that's just the truth of it.
I would add, as far as the shelters and prioritization goes, we really try in any of our shelters that have areas for families to prioritize women and children. Our goal is to never turn away a family that shows up at the door of any shelter. If outreach workers come across a family with kids in the riverbeds, which has happened, we have found newborn babies in the riverbeds and things like that. We prioritize getting them into shelter immediately. We also prioritize veterans. There's always a space somewhere for a homeless veteran that is willing to accept shelter. So those are definitely our prioritizations. If our shelters get full, we obviously end up turning away single men before we turn away anyone else, which is really tough. I hate turning away anyone from shelter, but they're a bit less vulnerable on the streets. So we do try to, always have beds for everyone, but sometimes prioritization is necessary.
But I will add too, the prioritization does come from the community, right? I mean, so she was showing some funding sources on there like SURF, right? And that stood for the California Encampment Resolution Fund. That's a funding source that came out of the state government that did not come with any direction on how to spend it necessarily. There were restrictions within it. But so, for example, the county of Santa Barbara took it upon itself to take the first round of SURF funding and say, we're going to focus on homelessness and encampments essentially around transit corridors, whether that be railroads and other areas where homelessness is proliferating in dangerous areas that are affecting transportation networks, but also very harmful to the encamped themselves by living so close. And that was a choice that the county strategized on its own. So the funding came from the state. The local community decided how it wanted to invest that money strategically. Another round of SURF came along, and we decided that the riverbeds were a place that it's very prolific in homelessness and needs to be addressed. Again, that was a local decision made using higher funding. So sometimes funding sources does come very directed, like for veterans or for youth or in domestic violence, and that limits the funding. But there are other funding sources that the community can speak up and say, this is, so the next round we have for SURF 3, round 3, is for vehicular homelessness. So those are strategic decisions that are sort of linked through time and space in our community, but were local decisions. So that's where some of the priority comes from, really the people saying we need help in those areas.
And I'll just add, just to wrap up, because you brought up misconceptions, I think as we hear often is if you build it, they will come. And so I think you're hearing here the different or the various kind of checks and balances that we've created through our coordinated entry system that really allows us to look at the individuals and confirm that they're coming from our community as where, I'm spacing on the word now, sorry, confirming their eligibility essentially. So that's just another misconception there.
Okay, let's talk hard numbers. So do you have a sense of how many people are experiencing homelessness in the San Ynez Valley or experiencing housing insecurity? And also, do we have a sense of trends, whether that's trending upward, especially since the pandemic?
Well, yeah.
I mean, I could speak more countywide than San Ynez Valley in particular, so go ahead.
Maybe I'll start and then jump right in, but during the course of a year, we serve about 4,000 people countywide. On any given night, there are about 2,000 people who are in shelters or living unsheltered, outside in vehicles. And then we do, as part of our point in time count, but also the data we collect in our homeless management information system, we look at by city, even by zip code, who's experiencing homelessness. And we do see smaller numbers in the valley of people who meet that literal homeless definition. So, in the point in time count, it's typically, 20 people or under who are surveyed. And, we might see similar numbers, for people on any given day in our homeless management information system also. But that doesn't capture, people who might be really on the verge of becoming homeless, and also need to be supported, to avoid becoming homeless.
Yeah, again, I mean, the numbers in terms of specific for the valley, I'm not necessarily aware, but I mean, I can say from our point in time count, when we look at HMIS, that it's roughly proportionate. There's no area in the county that's disproportionately experiencing homelessness. For example, you'd expect the city of Santa Barbara and Santa Maria, being as populous as they are, to have a lot more, and they do, and the cities of Buellton and Solvang and so forth to have less, and they do. But the issue that we're talking about tonight is this: we just don't want anybody or any community to experience, whether there's 1 or 5 or 10 people, and not understand that there are ways to address that homeless situation, and especially when it comes to housing, insecurity, as we have, the population just getting older, moving into the years of elderly, and as the inflation rates go up and you're living off fixed income, we're here to address that too in this community and make sure that no matter how small the numbers are in an absolute sense, we just want to address it everywhere equally. So we're here to just help everybody understand what we have available to help, like she was discussing.
So before I was at a nonprofit, I was in education. When we talked about a continuum, we were often wanting to take someone here through there. But when we talk about the continuum of homelessness, we have an opportunity in here, the city of Solvang, to not keep going. We can stay and bring back. And I think that then becomes what our choice is. And I really appreciated the comment saying that where you decide to allocate your resources and set your priorities is the needle you can move. But it doesn't just happen. It comes through that, through that investment. And so I just gave you an example of what did January and February's work look like, that throughout the San Ynez Valley, there were 43 households that met the low to moderate income and completed the documentation to get on a wait list for low income housing. Is that everybody that was eligible? No. That's just giving you a glimpse of those that knew of the opportunity, that had the opportunity and the support for us to get through the system. And that is our low to moderate income. So that's just a tip of the iceberg. But we are sitting at that point of we can change what our reality looks like for our community, but not without setting that as a priority and not without allocating the resources, the financial resources, the people resources, the structures, and the policies to support that. Here in the community. So as we go into budgeting cycles, as we go into grant and funding opportunities, I would challenge each of us. I'm looking in the audience and I know that there's decision makers here, right? Whether you're on the city council or in your nonprofits or in a service delivery in Buellton, you look and ask, what have I allocated to address homelessness or houseless insecurity or prevention or diversion? If you don't have that allocation in your budget, it won't happen.
We have 2 related questions. One is about if someone is actively using substances, are they eligible for any housing? Would they be considered for housing? And then on a related note, if there's someone who is experiencing homelessness that's saying, "Hey, I've tried everywhere and I'm hitting dead ends," what do we tell them?
Sorry.
Not used to these microphones. I would say somebody still active in their addiction. We are, all of our programs are housing first models. So we reduce all barriers to entry into our programs, which mean whether it's permanent housing or shelters, they are allowed in to our shelters and be able to access shelter, even if they are struggling with their addiction. We don't allow drugs and alcohol on site. We hope to stabilize them as quickly as possible and continuously have that change talk with them about accessing substance use treatment. But bottom line, it comes down to their choice. We can't force that, and it's not a precursor to whether or not they'll be housed. We put in the exact same effort with them to get them permanently housed. We treat them the same in our shelters, but everything is based on behavior in the shelters. If their substance use is leading to unsafe behaviors, especially in our shelters that are congregate and there's kids around, that's where we don't have a tolerance, and we don't allow behaviors to become unsafe in those spaces. In our non-congregate shelters, we do room checks, we do wellness checks, we don't allow anything on site. We work really closely with the clients to try to connect them. We use our sobering centers locally. I don't think I mentioned them in the Good Sam services, but we have a sobering center in Santa Barbara and in Santa Maria and soon in Lompoc, which is an incredible service that law enforcement can use, that the shelters can use. If someone comes back to one of my shelters and they're so under the influence that I'm worried about allowing them to go into their tiny home or, be around the kids or something like that, I can take them to the sobering center and they can hold them for 48, 72 hours, help make a call to the access line, help connect them with services, have medical staff available to keep an eye on them to make sure that they're safe and that they're not overdosing or something like that happening. So we do not discriminate based on substance use, but we push really hard to get past that. And what we have seen historically in all of our shelters is once somebody is able to come in from the elements and have all of their basic needs met, like what am I going to eat tonight? Where am I going to shower? Will I have clean clothes? Then they start thinking about the next step in their life, which is the goals, which they realize substance use does not align, and they ask for the help, and they're successful in the help because this is the one time that they've really wanted it and nobody's forced it on them. So it is really successful to be able to offer those services to them. And I don't remember the second question. Wow.
Yeah. So in the example of someone who is saying, hey, I've tried all the shelters, I've tried all the services, they're not working for me. What do you recommend you would say to that person?
Call us, call our outreach teams, keep trying. There are services out there. If it didn't work out at a shelter because you're just, a shelter rules and things like that are too hard for you, then, let one of our outreach teams come meet with you and get you connected to services and get you on the road towards housing. I really feel like this community, and because the incredible different providers and homeless services through the county has a solution for everyone. I mean, I have had clients where I'm like, okay, here's the situation. I have no idea how we're ever going to get this person housed, and can call Emily, can call the team at the county, and we can brainstorm it. We have these amazing calls. It feels like weekly. I know they're probably not weekly, but at least every other week. There's different segments of the population that we talk about weekly. We talk about these clients by name. We talk about their stories. We talk about what the obstacles are and how we can get over those obstacles as all the service providers being led by the county. So I feel like that there's a solution for everyone. We housed a veteran that has a service rooster. So, we didn't think that was going to be possible, that we would be able to find housing for this gentleman with his service rooster, who is like the love of his life, that he actually found the egg and hatched it and has been in this rooster's life for its entire life. And we thought, how in the world are we going to find a landlord that is going to allow this gentleman and his rooster inside the house? But we did. So I do believe that there's solutions for everything. So if you hit a roadblock, keep trying, and call the service providers and let us try to figure things out.
And Lana, I kind of want to jump in here because that's exactly why I wanted to have this forum. As I mentioned, we have a handful of service-resistant folks in our community. I believe very strongly they're service resistant because they have family and friends here that are, for lack of a better term, enabling their behavior. If they had knowledge that there was no help coming from their friends or family, I think they would be more inclined to take advantage. So, I guess the point is, I'm encouraging tough love in that respect. Take advantage. Get them to talk to Kirsten or whoever and learn. I mean, like she said, if we can get a service rooster placed, we can place pretty much anybody. Not we, but the system. So that's, again, exactly why I wanted to have this forum. Living on the streets is not really living. And helping them by giving them the things they need, the tent, the sleeping bag, the money, isn't really helping them. Let the system work. These services didn't exist even just a few years ago. So, and that was my message. And I was asked as we got started, what would be my idea of success for this meeting tonight? And if we can get just one of our service-resistant folks into the system, I would say it would be a success.
I think that's a good segue since we're running short on time. I'm going to make a plug for this one more time, just to say, I think what Erica was saying earlier about how it's hard to remember all of these things after the meeting. I think if you remember, if I could have you take away one thing, it would be to maybe remember one service that you didn't know existed before tonight and share that with a friend so we can help spread the word. So I think the final question to you all would be, what should people in the community do that would actually be promoting solutions to homelessness? Do you have one tip you could offer? Open to anyone.
I'll jump in, excuse me, with an obvious one that was mentioned earlier, but for people who are elected to propose affordable housing projects is a tough thing to do. But I think people don't really understand that nowadays it's teachers' aides, it's the people who are working in our restaurants and preparing our food. It's the people who qualify for low-income housing are working poor. And so to have a low-income housing project near you, they're beautiful. It doesn't look any different if you go to the housing project that Erica described in Buellton. It looks exactly like the project next door. They're lovely apartments. And so I think embracing the construction of more low-income housing, because we desperately need it throughout the county, is one place to start.
I guess I would add housing, definitely. Rent out your rooms to folks that maybe were formerly homeless, build an ADU, advocate for bigger units. We can all make a difference. I really believe that. But also just become acquainted with the services that are provided. If you see, somebody asking for money in front of, one of the shops or on the side of the freeway, know who to call, know that we have an access line number. If somebody says, gosh, I just really need help with treatment for my substance use, you have a very small window at that moment when they want that help to find them help. So who do you call? Know that there's a phone number, there's an access line phone number you would call at that moment. If somebody is asking you for shelter, know where you can connect them to shelter. Call one of our outreach teams. There's business cards on the table of our outreach team. Perfect phone number to hand anybody that is unsheltered that's asking for help. So just, educate yourself on the services that are provided. You guys have an access point with people helping people here in the Santa Ynez Valley as well, that you can call them and they can help connect with us. But just, my logo on everything is be the change you wish to see in the world. And I am a firm believer in that each one of us can be the change if we just know where to start and where to send somebody.
A lot of people don't like the first of the month because that's when those bills are due. But on the first of the month at People Helping People, we have a incredible neighbor that grew up with her parents, her dad, gambling. And sometimes they were in a lavish home, and other times they were in their car, and other times they were in a hotel. And she's doing well these days, but she's never forgotten it. And despite that she could write a check for the full year, she walks into our headquarters on the first of the month. And she has committed that the first check she writes is to People Helping People for homelessness prevention. That's how she's decided to make that legacy. And that is 100% of our homelessness prevention dollars in our current budget. That is helping pay for a hotel stay for a family fleeing domestic violence that we're hoping is going to be housed at Polo Village. Without her monthly donation to People Helping People, we couldn't do that. When we allocate some resources from People Helping People, it is a commitment, an ongoing relationship with our case managers. It's a partnership, and it's because of a lot of people investing. And so I want to invite that partnerships can really change people's lives and be what change or the community that we want. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've already heard advocacy, advocating for affordable housing, giving to nonprofits, that you trust, that are working hard in your community, but also educating yourself about homelessness, learning more about it, looking at data, reading about homelessness. Volunteering, I think, is another great way to both give and learn, talking to people who are experiencing homelessness. I mean, I've had some really amazing conversations with people and, hearing about their experience in the system, why they became homeless. So that can give you, I think, great insight also into how we can better address this issue in our community.
Yeah, no new ideas here. I would say the education, educate yourself, understand it, and then apply that through, volunteering or working in the area for me is an effective way to help this. Yeah.
I'll close by saying, why we're all here. It's bringing it back to the people. I truly believe that no one is service resistant by choice. No one that is experiencing homelessness woke up one day and decided to become homeless. I think over a series of time and events, people become outcasted. So if we can bring people back in and make them feel a part of the community, it'll take those services a lot much further when they can trust again and feel wanted and that they don't have to jump through those hoops. So just acknowledging someone when you see them will go a long way.
I just wanted to add, I gave you my personal story. Like I said, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. And it gave me a new appreciation for the phrase, "There but for the grace of God, go I."
Thank you all so much. Will you pull up that next slide? Just wanted to close by saying we did not get to all the questions, so please do bug us. We have our contact info here. But also, if you're interested, you can put your name on the list with your email address, and we can send out responses to these questions. We won't add you to the newsletter unless you check the box saying you want to be on the newsletter, so just know that. But yeah, I mean, just thank you. We really appreciate you making time for this. We know that it's a sign that you care about your community, that you would be here on a wet Wednesday night to talk with all of us. So we're grateful to you, grateful to the mayor for being here with us, grateful to Supervisor Hartman and Randy for organizing this. So thank you. Thanks, everyone.